Hello, reading buddies. This is Miss Katie. This is geared toward my church friends and my children at the church because it is a religious book. The First Easter by Carol Hare. The story of why we celebrate Easter. Now, we have talked about Miss Teresa did her moment on different symbols we see during our Easter story. And if you're listening to Miss Katie and Lucas's resurrection egg story, we're talking about the symbols. So this book has a nice little message on the back. At Easter time, we think of fresh new grass and baby animals and warm golden sunshine. We think of baskets full of candy and brilliant colored eggs. But most of all, at Easter time, we need to think about Jesus and all he did for us. So we have all the baby animals down here. There's like 2 sheep, a donkey, which we found out was very, very important, little ducks, and a dove. I'm going to go ahead and start our story. The first Easter. At Easter time, we think of fresh new grass and baby animals and warm golden sunshine. We think of baskets full of candy and brilliant colored eggs. But most of all, at Easter time, we think about Jesus and all the things he did for us. Jesus was born in a manger in Bethlehem on the first Christmas day. Angels told the shepherds about the baby, and they went out to see the child. A great star shone above the manger, and its sparkling light led the Magi to the baby Jesus. They came on camels and brought gifts, and they worshipped the newborn child, the Son of God. Many years before Jesus' birth, prophets had foretold that God's Son would come to earth and save the world from sin. This book has beautiful illustrations. When Jesus became a man, he chose 12 men to be his disciples. They traveled with Jesus, and he taught them about God. Jesus healed the sick and the crippled. Everywhere he went, many people gathered to hear him speak. Little children came to him also, and he greeted them with love and kindness. This is one of my favorite parts, the stories where the children come to talk to Jesus. When the time came for Jesus to fulfill the teachings of the prophets, he traveled to Jerusalem with his disciples. Jesus rode into the city on a donkey. People lined the streets to see him, and they laid palm branches on the ground to make soft carpets for the donkey's feet. Jesus entered Jerusalem surrounded by love and glory on the first Palm Sunday. So we celebrated that this past Sunday. Jesus went to the temple where people worshipped. Inside there were men buying and selling animals. Jesus was shocked and angry. He threw the money boxes into the air, and the men ran away. This made the temple leaders very angry. They wanted to get rid of Jesus. After the temple was clear, Jesus went inside to worship and pray. So he was not happy. Jesus was not happy about how the people were treating his temple. Inside the temple, Jesus talked about God's word with the chief priest and the temple elders. They asked Jesus many questions and tried to trick him into saying something wrong. The priests asked Jesus, "What God's most important commandment?" Jesus answered, "Love God with all your heart." Then Jesus said, "But I give you a new commandment. You must love your neighbor as yourself." The priests were very angry. Not everybody likes a new way of thinking, do they? More and more people listened to Jesus as he taught about God. The temple leaders and the priests grew more afraid of Jesus and began to plot against him. They looked for ways to have Jesus arrested. On the night of the feast of unleavened bread, Jesus and his disciples gathered together for the traditional Passover meal. Jesus broke bread, gave thanks to God, and then passed it to his disciples. "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me," he said. Jesus then passed around the cup, saying, "This is my blood, which is shed for you." This was the last time Jesus would eat with his disciples, and he wanted them to remember him in the future by sharing the bread and the cup. This was Jesus' Last Supper. So this is, I like how we do when we do communion the first Sunday at church. We do it other times, but we definitely always do it the first Sunday. After supper, Jesus and his disciples went to the garden. Jesus went off to pray. He returned with his disciples and had fallen asleep. Suddenly, soldiers came to the garden. They carried torches and spears. The soldiers arrested Jesus. The disciples wanted to fight, but Jesus said, "Do not fight. God's will be done." The soldiers took Jesus to the court. The high priest, where all the chief priests and elders had gathered. Jesus asked, "Are you Christ, the Son of God?" Jesus replied, "Yes, it is as you say. Take him to the Pilate. He will judge him." Each Passover, the Pilate released one prisoner. He went out to the crowd and asked if he should release Jesus. But the people shouted for Jesus' death. Soldiers led Jesus to the hill where they crucified him. Even though it was afternoon, the sky grew black, thunder roared, and the lightning pierced the dark sky. At the moment of Jesus' death, a powerful earthquake shook the ground. Before sunset, Jesus' friends took down his body and laid him in a tomb. A huge stone was rolled in front of the opening, and the soldiers was sent to guard the tomb. Early Sunday morning, 3 days after Jesus' death, his mother and 2 other women came to the tomb. They saw that the stone was rolled away, and when they entered the tomb, Jesus' body was gone. The women cried out, "Who took Jesus away?" Suddenly a man in white appeared. "Why do you look for a living among the dead?" he asked. "Jesus is not here. He has risen." The women were so glad that they ran to tell the disciples Jesus was alive. When they heard the news, 2 disciples returned to the tomb with Mary Magdalene. They entered the tomb and found the burial clothes folded neatly. They left the tomb feeling afraid because Jesus was gone. Mary Magdalene returned alone outside the tomb weeping. As she sobbed, she heard a man's voice ask her, "Why do you cry?" Mary Magdalene replied, "Sir, if you have taken Jesus away, please tell me where you have put him." Then the man whispered, "Mary." Mary lifted her head and saw it was Jesus who stood before her. She ran to tell the disciples that she had seen Jesus. When Jesus appeared to his disciples, he said to them, "Go throughout the world, tell the people what you have seen and heard, and I will be there with you always, even until the end of time." This is why Christians celebrate Easter. We remember that Jesus gave up his life because he loved us. And on Easter morning, we rejoice because Jesus rose from the dead. And we know that because of him, we too will live. Thank you for listening to my story today. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to another one this week. Thank you. Bye.